All right, in our third grammar mini lesson, we're going to be talking about conjunctions. We're going to talk about coordinating conjunctions, and we're also going to talk about conjunctive adverbs. Both of these are used as connectors inside sentences or between sentences. You have to use the one that accurately conveys the relationship between the ideas that are being connected. So coordinating conjunctions, we're going to talk about that first. The most common one you're going to see is and. You also see but, so, and or used pretty frequently, and then sometimes you might see yet, nor, or for also used, and they have the same grammatical function. So what they do is they join grammatical structures of similar form, and we'll talk about what that means in a second, and they turn them into one grammatical unit. So you could say cat or dog, warm yet comfortable, over the river and through the woods, he likes hamburgers but she prefers chicken. So the things you need to remember about coordinating conjunctions: first, you use the word that conveys the right relationship. So you need to know what those words mean. And means addition, but and yet are contrast. So is a consequence. Or and nor is options or lack of options. And for is basically meaning because. In addition to using the word that conveys the right relationship, you want to only use commas along with the coordinating conjunction in sequences, and then when you're connecting independent clauses. Those are the only times commas go with coordinating conjunctions. Examples of coordinating conjunctions being used: Dexter or Donna has your book. I can't wait to go home and eat my dinner. She likes Christmas, but she likes Halloween even more. And you'll notice the comma went along with the third example because you have two complete sentences. When the items being connected get to be as strong as an independent clause, they need a comma along with the conjunction. And so maybe even think of it like scales. So you only use the conjunction when you have a noun on either side. You only use a conjunction when you have a verb phrase on either side. You only have a conjunction when it's a prepositional phrase on either side. But when you get to independent clauses on either side, you got to have both, a conjunction like and a comma. And then the third thing to remember about coordinating conjunctions is you want to treat the items that you connected as one grammatical unit, which we're going to come back to when we talk about subject-verb agreement in another lesson. A different kind of conjunction is a conjunctive adverb. These connect like conjunctions, and they have meanings like adverbs. They might express these kinds of things: contrast, addition, cause and effect, conclusion, example, restatement, time, choice, and emphasis. Some examples of those words when you're talking about contrast. However, that's the one you're probably going to see the most often. Instead, nevertheless, still, on the contrary, on the other hand, anyway. And you notice these are a lot of times what you use to transition between ideas. Another one, addition, also, besides, furthermore, in addition, in fact, moreover. People like to use moreover, and a lot of times they're not using it in the right spot. Cause and effect or conclusion might be accordingly, as a result, consequently, hence, so, therefore, and thus. Example or restatement might be for example, for instance, namely, that is. Time might be afterwards, earlier, finally, later, in the meantime, meanwhile, then, subsequently. Choice would be otherwise. Emphasis might be indeed, to be sure, that is to say. And you notice those categories, they look a lot like those subordinating conjunction categories from lesson number 2. So how are they different? The function is a little different. These are connectors. They provide transitions between ideas. You can omit them without altering the meaning of the sentence or the sentences that they're connecting. That's the other big thing. The other main difference is the location, where these words and phrases can go. Subordinating conjunctions from the last lesson, those only go at the beginning of their clauses. Conjunctive adverbs can move around. They can introduce a clause, they can be attached to the end of a clause, or they can even be inserted into the middle of a clause, and a lot of times there's a lot of different places in the middle of the clause that they can go. So here's one example. After having an obnoxious person beside me for an 8-hour flight, I wonder if the universe is punishing me for something. This is the subordinate clause version. Here is another one. Imagine a 2-year-old without the cuteness if you want to know what she was like. That if is there at the beginning of the clause. If you use a conjunctive adverb, that word can move around. However, that comparison may be unfair to 2-year-olds. You can also move it to the middle. That comparison, however, may be unfair to 2-year-olds. And it can go at the end. That comparison may be unfair to 2-year-olds, however. So that flexibility about where it goes tells you that it's a conjunctive adverb rather than a subordinate conjunction. Another thing about them that's different is the punctuation. Even when you include it in a single independent clause, a conjunctive adverb is referencing ideas in one or more additional independent clauses, usually ones that came earlier. So here's one example. That comparison may be unfair to 2-year-olds, however. The conjunctive adverb tells you that it's referencing and responding to previous ideas, connecting this idea to those that came before it. So those were the sentences that came before it, the ones about this is the woman on the plane and she was acting like a 2-year-old, but it might be unfair to compare her to a 2-year-old. The conjunctive adverb may appear within or transition between two independent clauses, connected by a semicolon as well. So that's another way to use it. Here's one example of that, and you see this sentence pattern a lot. If you want to know what she was like, imagine a 2-year-old without the cuteness, semicolon, and then you say, however, comma, that comparison may be unfair to 2-year-olds. And another place that you can put that, however, it doesn't have to be right after the semicolon. You still have that same flexibility to move it around. If you want to know what she was like, imagine a 2-year-old without the cuteness, semicolon. That comparison, however, may be unfair to 2-year-olds. If you want to know what she was like, imagine a 2-year-old without the cuteness. That comparison may be unfair to 2-year-olds, however. So same flexibility no matter where you put that, however, it still has the same meaning. Sometimes it might make sense to include the conjunctive adverb at the end of the first independent clause in the sequence. And same example, the however could go with the first sentence. That comparison may be unfair to 2-year-olds, however. And then you continue. Most kids that age would never think to ask the personal and obnoxious questions that this woman unloaded upon me. When the conjunctive adverb comes at the beginning or end of the independent clause, it's set off with a single comma. So it could be, however, comma, that comparison may be unfair to 2-year-olds, or that comparison may be unfair to 2-year-olds, comma, however. If the conjunctive adverb's in the middle of the sentence, somewhere else, it is set off by commas on both sides. That comparison, comma, however, comma, may be unfair to 2-year-olds. So the idea there is that because it's non-essential information, you're going to put commas on either side of it to show that that information is not essential. And then we're going to cover that in a whole lot more depth in another lesson as well. All right, now you can continue on to the quiz to review what this lesson covered.